YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. And in today's video, we're going through every single NFL team, and I'm giving you the most important player on each of those teams for the 2020 NFL season. Not necessarily best player, but most important. We're going to break it down by each team, and might have some surprises in there. Maybe not as many quarterbacks as you would think, but a good amount of quarterbacks, obviously, because some good ones are very important to their team. But excited to do this one. More videos like this on the way, and then we have full coverage in season. Cannot wait for the season to kick off. Can't wait for our weekly picks videos. Those are the best videos, in my opinion, on the channel. So hopefully you can subscribe, turn notifications on, and join us for those upcoming videos. Would really appreciate any of that. And then following our Twitter and our podcast, links down below, description comments for those, would be much appreciated as well. That Twitter is a must-follow for the NFL during games, live tweeting games, so you're going to want to follow that. But on to the Cardinals. First one, went with Kyler Murray here, so quarterback to start things off, and really strongly considered Chandler Jones, because Chandler Jones, one of the better pass rushers in all of football. We know how important pass rush is in today's game, affecting the quarterback. Quarterback, most important position. Maybe not for every team, but affecting the quarterback, throwing the quarterback off is why pass rush, edge rush position is so important. And Chandler Jones really carrying the load out there. You take Chandler Jones away, what were the Cardinals going to do? So that's why I considered him. But why it is Kyler Murray is you really look at the system. You look at the coaching staff and what kind of system they put in place for the Cardinals, and why Kyler Murray was the first overall pick. And we all know a lot of teams probably wouldn't have picked Kyler Murray. Those other teams that took quarterbacks where they took them, they probably liked the quarterback they got, even if they had that #1 spot. And it's because Kyler Murray fits that system, that Cliff Kingsbury spread system, so perfectly there, So I think there's several NFL quarterbacks in the NFL that are considered better than Kyler Murray, but they wouldn't be better in that system. So Kyler Murray coming from that Oklahoma offense, very similar fit to Kingsbury in that former air raid Texas Tech offense. A lot of similarities in that offense. So that's why Kyler Murray was the pick for them a year ago, and that's why he's so important to them and will be going long, into the long-term future there. The Falcons, another quarterback here with Matt Ryan. I think if you take, consider Grady Jarrett too, because Grady Jarrett was really carrying that defense last year, and if you take him away, teams will be able to run all over them, and he's actually the one kind of getting the pass rush, getting the pressure too. But Matt Ryan, you got big problems if you take away from this team. They'll be down with their leader, that veteran guy that's got them far before. And I just think this team's just significantly weaker without him. You got some good weapons out there, but this team just doesn't have enough on defense. They're relying on the offense, so it's kind of on Matt Ryan's shoulders there. So I went with the quarterback there. The Ravens is an obvious one, another quarterback, Lamar Jackson, because he's more than a quarterback. The offense is built around him. They took, he made the playoffs a year prior to this year and a year before this year, and it didn't work out too well, but the system really wasn't in place. They were still running kind of the Joe Flacco system, and they built it through the offseason. The coaching staff sat down. Greg Roman, the guy, kind of sat down, and they created this offense because of Lamar Jackson, around Lamar Jackson, and they didn't have the best receiver weapons. Maybe they had a pretty solid room, but it really it didn't get carried because they have some talent everywhere, but it really runs through Lamar Jackson. The MVP was the MVP for a reason, so easily the most important player on that Ravens team. The Bills actually went with TRE'DAVIOUS White. For me to put a cornerback as the most important position for a team player on a team, it is pretty out there, because I don't know if the cornerback position is that important in today's game. I think there's a lot of positions that are more important, but you look at the Bills. Bills a very balanced, very solid team, well-balanced team is what I like to put it. But if you look at their defense, which is very good, a spot where they could get better is the edge rush. They got pretty good interior pressure. They got some guys that can come off the edge. Don't get me wrong here. They got some guys that can play, but they're not getting a ton of pressure from the outside. And if you don't have TRE'DAVIOUS White out there, I think teams will be able to throw along the sideline all day. So TRE'DAVIOUS White takes out half of that field, or one side of that field. And that is very important to them, because sometimes quarterbacks could have some time to throw against them, was my point. Josh Allen is probably the answer, the correct answer for long term as he continues to build. I know if you take him away, you got some problems as well. But I went with White there for the reasons I explained. I think the defense takes a huge hit without Tre'Davious White there. The Panthers, obvious one, Christian McCaffrey, because he's more than a running back. You know, he was the Panthers. Was the Panthers. They had Teddy Bridgewater. DJ Moore is getting better. They had Robbie Anderson, so hopefully they could take some load off Christian McCaffrey here. But, I mean, anytime, you know, pretty much everyone knew he was coming with the ball. Going to get the ball in the backfield, on the outside. If he's lining at receiver, you know, it's an option that he definitely can get the ball. You know, when the game's in the line, the ball went to Christian McCaffrey. We've seen it in the Bucs game last year. We've seen it in the Packers game last year. What was that, the Blizzard game? Or not much of a blizzard, but close. But, yeah, wild game there. But in both those games that I just explained. But you know the ball is getting in his hands. He's the most important piece. He's the guy that carries the load for this. It's an obvious one. The Bears went with Khalil Mack here. The edge rusher, obviously one of the best in football. I think you look back a couple years ago and you see when they traded for Khalil Mack. You know, they acquired him, and you see the good defense go from good to great, the best in football, and they led that team to the playoffs. That defense, once they added that important piece, that impact of Khalil Mack, you know, Trubisky made the playoffs. You know, think of that offense, which wasn't too bad that year, but made the playoffs, but mainly because of guys like this, because of their defense. And you could actually argue, and you see them without Akeem Hicks last year, how dominant he is up front. But then, you know, thinking about what if Mack was out, it'd be way worse. So I think Mack, you know, providing that pressure, the defense is how they win games over there in Chicago. So he is, and edge rush being, you know, arguably the second most important position in football, you know, right there with maybe tackle, offensive tackle, that is. But any kind of pressure is just huge. So I went with Khalil Mack there. The Bengals, I went with a guy, you know, some people don't like when I put guys in videos that haven't played or proven anything yet, but I went with Joe Burrow. You know, #1 pick for a reason. He's their guy. They need him to play at, you know, somewhere near where he was playing at you know, at LSU for them to be successful there, and I think he can do that. And I think you take him away, obviously you have some big time problems. I mean, Joe Mixon's pretty important. Tyler Boyd's actually a very important piece, especially with Joe Burrow in there. I think Tyler Boyd's ability to play in the slot, play outside, I talk about it. He's going to kind of be Joe Burrow's Justin Jefferson, that very important key piece there, but obviously a polished, a better, an NFL version of that. But Joe Burrow will kind of make or break this offense, which I don't expect him to break it really, but so I did go with the rookie here. Shouldn't really be too much of a surprise. The Browns was probably my favorite one to do here, the Cleveland Browns, because they got options here. This is actually a kind of debate with myself in my head, you know, my own head when I make this. I went with Myles Garrett. I strongly considered two other players. They have a number of good players, but I strongly considered two other players. First, it's Baker Mayfield. You know, we see the difference, you know, when Baker Mayfield's balling like 2 years ago or last year when he's struggling. You see the difference. Obviously, they need him in the game. He's an important piece of their franchise. You know, I think the offense will be simplified for him this year. I think a lot of play action will get him a lot of open receivers. It'll also kind of get him outside. They'll be able to run some kind of bootleg plays. So I think he's going to be a lot better this year. He's not going to light up the stat sheet. I think he's going to be more consistent. I think he's obviously going to be a very important piece to this team. But in that type of simplified offense, I don't want to say you can throw any quarterback. That's not accurate. You can throw any quarterback in there. But there's a lot of quarterbacks that play around the same level. Looking at Nick Chubb, who maybe was their best player last year. That type of offense, that Stefanski offense, is built through the running back. You want to make defenses fear your running game to open up those passes, to get Baker Mayfield those open, you know, those open passes, that, you know, to get him consistent, those big play abilities. So you may argue that running back is so important in that offense, and it is. It is very, very important. Nick Chubb needs to keep these defenses feared to open up the pass, and he will. So why not Nick Chubb? And I was ready to put Nick Chubb there. It's because, you know, if he did go down, which obviously it would not be a good thing if he went down, obviously. I just don't want anybody to get the wrong idea there. You do have Kareem Hunt, who is a very solid running back, so it would be a tough blow, but they actually have another running back that good there for a reason, because it's so important. So you have that 1-2 punch, and that's really a good thing to have. Myles Garrett, you take away him from that edge rush, you got a problem. We actually saw it last year, them really struggling down the stretch without Myles Garrett. They need that important pass rush. There's a reason they extend him long term. You know, they're gonna win with their balance on offense, because they got a number of guys to kind of balance it off. They need Myles Garrett to be out there and to be on his game to win, to help win games on defense. So I went with Myles Garrett for those reasons there. But a tough one. I really enjoy kind of just thinking, debating arguing with myself almost about the Browns. I almost went with two other guys. Very close to putting two other guys there, the ones I explained. Cowboys went with Dak. I think as soon as Dak kind of got in there and kind of got his groove and kind of got going, the offense kind of built around him. And they bring in Mike McCarthy for a reason. It's a good fit for a guy like Dak Prescott, what he did with Aaron Rodgers. So it's all put in place around Dak Prescott. You could argue some other guys, but I didn't really have to think about it too much. I think, and it's interesting too because they didn't want to sign him long term yet. We'll see what decides to happen. But Dak's their guy. He's a guy as a quarterback that was able to, since Tony Romo, been able to take over and kind of, have the team built around him, which even though there's some good quarterbacks out there, it's really not that case for a lot of teams. The Broncos, maybe a little bold, but I went with Bradley Chubb here. Drew Lock, probably the future guy. They got a lot of guys in the future there on the offense. That's good. For this year, I'm going Bradley Chubb. Von Miller probably would be most people's pick here, and it's very important for Von Miller to be out there. But Bradley Chubb, we've seen him miss last year, and we've seen how much harder it becomes for these defensive players like Von Miller. But Bradley Chubb is also the future as well. And I think, being my #1 prospect a few years ago, how talented he is, if he's out there full time and getting better every single week, I think it's not out there for him to be maybe better than Von Miller, that much of an impact. So I think having him out there is just so important. This is an important piece. This video is based on this year, but it's this year, and for him, it is the future as well. So Bradley Chubb's he needs to be out there for them this year. It's just so important. The Lions, I went with Matthew Stafford here. We've seen them play without Matthew Stafford. They were playoff contenders before. He was almost an MVP, somewhat in the MVP conversation before he got hurt. And then all of that obviously fell apart after. When he has been healthy in the past, actually sometimes I don't know if he was healthy. He had some lower back issues playing through it, and he started to struggle. So I do need to see him finish down the stretch and get this team into the playoffs. But if you take him away, it's the team's really built around him. They got some other good pieces, but it's really built around him, and it's kind of up to him to get them to that next step, and that's the playoffs. The Packers, interesting one as well. I went Aaron Rodgers. This might be an obvious one for a lot of people, but it's really not, in my opinion. I strongly considered, and everyone knows how much I like Zadarius Smith, so you probably thought, and because of the thumbnail, you probably thought I was going Zadarius Smith there, and I really thought about it. I strongly considered it. I look at last year, why Zadarius Smith was my defensive pick, player of the year pick, and it's because how important he was to that team and the production and how he made his teammates better and playing multiple different positions. I think if you take away Zadarius Smith last year, they're nowhere near as good as they were. Their defense got them to where they were. Aaron Jones stepped up for them last year on the offensive side, but their defense, led by Zadarius Smith, got them that far last year, in my opinion. I feel very strongly about that. And you see how many games that Zadarius Smith really affected. There was a lot of games. I mean, even they're in a battle with the Vikings somewhat for that division, and you see the impact he made in those games alone. So I think you take him away. I think there was some problems last year, but look at where, I think the Packers fans could agree with me here, that it was kind of so close but still far, is how I kind of explain it. The Packers made it all the way to the NFC Championship in a very good season last year, they made it one step away from the Super Bowl. One step away, but it didn't really feel like they were that close. I guess putting up with the Niners kind of made, just they couldn't get over that hump. And I think why is because they needed Aaron Rodgers to kind of, in that offense, there's others to blame, too. I think they needed more weapons out there, but they needed Aaron Rodgers to kind of be Aaron Rodgers a little more to get over that next step, and that's what makes him the most important player of the team. And on top of that, if you take him away, I know they have Jordan Love, which I still like. I like to pick for the future, but if you take him away, you got problems. But if Aaron Rodgers can play his game consistently, that's what makes this team great, and that's what makes this team a Super Bowl potential team. So that's why I want Aaron Rodgers there. But Zadarius Smith is way more important, way better a ball player than a lot of you out there think. The Texans went with Deshaun Watson, kind of an easy choice, but you actually can make a case for J.J. Watt, because if you take J.J. Watt out of that team, the whole defensive scheme changes. You watch it last year, the whole thing changes. It changes for who actually plays, who plays where. A lot on Whitney Merciless too because of that. And J.J. Watt's able to be kind of an edge guy and a three-technique guy, kind of a rare talent. More of these guys are coming in the NFL, and they're so impactful. But for those reasons, J.J. Watt, you can make the case for, but Deshaun Watson's the guy there. They were lacking that quarterback position for so long. To get Deshaun Watson, and he gets them that consistent wins. Remember, J.J. Watt was out, and they were lacking on defense. And they're even lacking. They had a decent running back room, but definitely a spot where they can get a lot better. And Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller hurt. Deshaun Watson still gets him there, still clutches up, puts the team on his back, gets that win in the playoffs. So it's definitely Deshaun Watson, especially going forward too. The Colts went with Quenton Nelson. We've seen them go from worst to first in offensive line right when they added Quenton Nelson. That was a key thing to make them to complete the unit, take that next step, but not only take that next step, take another step and go to the top of the NFL, the offensive line, and it's consistently been that because how good these guys came together as a unit, but how good Quenton Nelson is as well. But a main reason here, the big reason here, you see what the Colts are doing with this running back room. They got a loaded running back room. They keep adding more. Then they draft Jonathan Taylor, who gives the potential to be at RB1. When they have Marlon Mack, when they have the weapons, even though he's on like a starting running back caliber guy, but Nyheim Hines, who is an absolute weapon. They got other guys as well. And that's because that's where they want to win. That's where they want to make their money there, is running the ball, using these running backs in multiple different ways. And that starts up front with Quenton Nelson. I think having him gives them the confidence, the ability to do that, to go out there and build this room up and focus on the running game first to win games, to open up things for Phillip Rivers. So that's what makes Quenton Nelson that important. Obviously, some other pieces, Darius Leonard, it could be considered here. The Jaguars, tough one. There's no clear-cut guy. I went with Josh Allen, though. The standout guy for the future. He was a standout as a rookie. The edge rusher that makes the flexibility, the versatility possible to change defenses a bit, because this guy can play 4-3 end. He can play 3-4 outside linebacker. They're able to kind of move on from Yannick Ngakoue because they have a guy like this, And I think, they bring in other types of, defenders like Joe Schobert, because they're able to, to move things around, get flexible with what they do, give different looks because of a guy like Josh Allen on the edge. So this is kind of their feature guy, and they were lucky that he dropped to them in the draft, and that was big time for them. So this is their guy. The question mark at quarterback still for the long-term future. I know there's some believers out there in Gardner Minshew, and that's fantastic. But even for those people that truly believe in him or that confident, it's still kind of, even in their heads, I think it's still kind of a wait and see. For the future with the quarterback position. But so I want Josh Allen there. The Chiefs, it's Patrick Mahomes. I don't think we need to really, say anything out. They actually, won with Matt Moore too. But it's pretty obvious that this is, the best quarterback in football. Most important position as well. So it has to be Patrick Mahomes here, and you see why he gets the money that he got there. The Chargers, I went with Derwin James here. We've seen the Chargers, a lot of expectations last year. They were without Derwin James, and he's definitely more than a safety. He can move around. He can come up. He can actually get after the quarterback, provide some pressure as well, play as a linebacker, play it deep, be a playmaker back there. So I think it's just that important. I actually think this was Melvin Ingram for a while, the most important player, because this was a guy that created for his teammate, made his teammates better, and still does. We see Joey Bosa, production-wise, play-wise, with Ingram on the field and without him on the field. So Ingram was strongly considered here because he's that type of player. But Derwin James is what they're building this around, this defense around. What they're putting in there, because he's more than just a safety. And I think just the impact he makes, the difference he makes for the team, is the reason I went with Derwin. You could actually argue Austin Eckler too, because how involved he is in the passing game. They don't have a deep receiver room. They got some studs at the top. They don't have a deep receiver room because Eckler is kind of part of that too. So you actually could make a case there. The Rams, pretty obvious. Went Aaron Donald. I think if you take away Aaron Donald in the past from this defense, it's the worst defense in football perhaps. Now they're building up that secondary. They got kind of Aaron Donald established, and they realize this guy can do some work up front and kind of make other guys better up there. Let's establish establish the secondary. They draft Taylor Rapp. They trade for Jalen Ramsey. They kind of discovered Troy Hill, who's pretty solid, underrated. So they're able to do those things because of Aaron Donald. You could probably make a case for Jared Goff, even though he's taken a lot of heat lately, but I thought it was a pretty obvious choice there with Aaron Donald. The Raiders went with Josh Jacobs. You see Josh Jacobs not on the field for the Raiders. You see the difference. I think this offense is kind of being put together and still is kind of around him. Running the ball to open up the pass, simplifying things for Derek Carr. And they don't have a really deep, they have a deep room, actually. They don't have a really, because I actually think Lynn Bowden's going to actually, I'm actually curious to see what they do there. I think he has, and I saw that on tape, even when he was at receiver, when he was at quarterback. The guy has running back vision. I think they're going to work on putting some size on him and possibly getting him the ball out of the backfield. But getting off topic here, Josh Jacobs goes down. They really don't have a guy that's really starting caliber, in my opinion, right now. So I think their offense runs through and will be built around Josh Jacobs. Dolphins went with the rookie, went with Tua. They don't have a lot of options here. This team's just being built right now. It starts with Tua Tagovailoa right now, and they're confident about him playing early this year, ready to go. He's passed the physical, everything. He's ready to roll, they say. So this is where it starts. This is the important piece here. Keep him healthy, and this much like Joe Burrow. This is what will. His play will kind of make the offense. So I went with Tua there. I actually thought it was a pretty obvious one, but it is tough putting a guy that hasn't played yet in here. The Vikings went with Harrison Smith. I think I've talked about in the past, the leader of this defense, the guy that does it all, more than a safety. You see him, tell his fellow defenders, his teammates, what to do on plays. You see him recognize the play before the snap. So I think if you take away Harrison Smith from that defense, you got problems. Obviously, they have a very good defensive mind, coach Mike Zimmer. They got other talented guys, but I think if they lose Harrison Smith, they have huge problems. You actually could argue Kirk Cousins, because if you take him away, they got a disaster probably for the next guy up. Dalvin Cook's very important because they have that offense that they want teams to fear the run to open up, so they can open up the pass, and they're much better when Dalvin Cook is out there, obviously. But went with Harrison Smith for the reasons I explained. The Patriots went with another corner here, the best corner in football to this point, Stephon Gilmore. Not really the best front seven in terms of, they've had it with the linebackers they just lost this offseason, but there's other teams that had better pass rushers, better presence up there. And Stephon Gilmore is able to still win, still kind of keeping quarterbacks scared because of his technique and his instincts back there. So I know this was a pretty clear one here, in my opinion. Stephon Gilmore here. Maybe Devin McCourty could be argued as well, but one with Stephon Gilmore here shouldn't be a surprise. The Saints have gone a lot of quarterbacks, and you could go Drew Brees, but I'm going Michael Thomas here. We actually seen Drew Brees get knocked out for some games last year. Teddy Bridgewater able to come in, who is a very solid quarterback, and get wins. Obviously, there's a difference between Brees and Bridgewater, but it didn't feel like as much as what you would think last year. And I think it's because how well coached and the talent that is on this team and having a guy like Michael Thomas. So I think whoever the next quarterback is after Drew Brees, I don't think there will be much of a drop because of the talent like Michael Thomas. I think is their best player. You can't really expect that next guy in to be as good as Drew Brees, of course. But I do think it's Michael Thomas. I do think he's their, and I think it's not the deepest receiver room too. So they did add Emmanuel Sanders, which was great. But having Michael Thomas in there is the most important piece in my opinion. The Giants is Saquon Barkley. I talk about some teams that like to run the ball to open up the pass. It's definitely the Giants, definitely what they're trying to do. They're building that interior offense. They're building the offense line in general for mainly run blocking to get potentially the best running back in football going, and that will make things a lot easier for the quarterback. So I don't think it's any question here that it's Saquon Barkley. The Jets, very tough here. I went actually C.J. Mosley. They don't have there's really no correct answer for the Jets. I went C.J. Mosley because I think they need him in there. They need that leader on defense, especially with Jamal Adams gone, which it would be Jamal Adams if he's still on the team. But they need that leader, the guy to control their defense. That's where they're built best in the inside, but they need their captain to kind of control that defense. They don't have the best edge rush presence on the outside, so they need these guys. And we've seen Mosley in the past be heavily involved and actually as a middle linebacker in the passing game. So I'm going to go with Mosley here. Some would argue Sam Darnold. I think for the future it's very important for him to continue to grow. But it's not a guy that you absolutely need him. You absolutely need this guy in this Gase system. It's not really the case at right now in before pre-2020. So I want C.J. Mosley there. Quinnen Williams could be the guy going forward as well. The Eagles, I think it's a pretty easy one with Carson Wentz. Almost feels like the system could change if Carson Wentz isn't in there. Maybe with Hurts in there now, maybe not the case anymore. But Wentz is just easily the most important guy. The guy has that big playability for them to kind of turn the game around, and you see him clutch up down the stretch of last season because he was struggling in that middle part of the season, was struggling a bit, but really clutched up at the stretch of the season to get them into playoffs. But I think it's kind of a no-brainer choice. It's definitely the choice for the future too because he's going to continue to grow, and he really could kind of break out this year. So we'll see. The Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger, you could argue some other guys like T.J. Watt, because I think guys like T.J. Watt, the pressure, the front seven, they make, guys like that make the whole defense a lot better, make the secondary look better. So you could argue that, but you see that this team was borderline, just missed the playoffs, and that was with very poor quarterback play. And this team was built to run around Roethlisberger for so long. Mike Tomlin's been in there for so long. So I think it's just the system and the importance of having Roethlisberger is just makes him the guy here. Because imagine if they had him in there last year. They were easily in the playoffs. So hopefully he can stay healthy this year for sure. The Seahawks is a very obvious. This is probably the ultimate one here. If you took the most important player from each NFL team away, who is impacted the most in a negative way, I think it's the Seattle Seahawks. I always talk about, they've done a good job building and finding the talent in the past and even now, but I always talk about I wish they would kind of finish this off, get those pieces that they're missing around Russell Wilson, mainly the offensive line, and that they would be the best team in football and the team to beat every year. So if you take Russell Wilson away, they are lacking in a lot of spots where there's not too many quarterbacks out there that can. I don't know if there's any, really, that could do what Russell Wilson does with what's around him. And don't get me wrong, he definitely has talent. I like Chris Carson a lot. I like the receiver duo. But you got major problems taking him out, and I think that's pretty obvious. 49ers went a little bold here. In my mind, it's not that bold, but it will be to some people. I went with ARIK ARMSTEAD here for the San Francisco 49ers. And I think they got a really good system put in place on offense where there's a number of quarterbacks that can succeed in that. Obviously, you need a good one. They do have in Jimmy Garoppolo. Everyone needs a good quarterback, and they do. George Kittle actually could be debated here, how important he is for them. But I don't know. Those tight ends aren't value that high. You find them, it's rare, and it's a gem they find, but in the middle of the rounds there, and the Niners probably would be confident they could find more, but you do need George Kittle, and it's tough leaving him off. The reason I went with ARIK ARMSTEAD, and you could actually argue other guys too, like Nick Bosa, some other guys there, but I think he kind of makes the defense, and the defense had some slight adjustments last year, and it was maybe the best in football last year. And you see what they do. They got Nick Bosa and D Ford as their edge rushers. Nick Bosa on one side, hand in the dirt, and you got D Ford kind of off the ball there, could actually drop back in coverage, and this is really only possible with a guy that can be a defensive end and slide in and be an interior guy, which are very rare, and that is ARIK ARMSTEAD. He was dominant off the edge. He was dominant inside. I don't think that defense is nearly as good. It's definitely good still, but I don't think it's the best in football if you don't have ARIK ARMSTEAD there. I think it's that important. So I might have went a little bold. You definitely can argue George Kittle. You can argue Nick Bosa. I think D Ford makes it unique as well. But you see this kind of backed up by them choosing Armstead over Buckner. They traded DeForest Buckner away so they can pay Armstead, because Buckner's great. Don't get me wrong. He's great, important. They're going to miss him a bit, even though they got a good replacement, Javon Kinlaw. But there's a million of those types of defensive tackles out there. There are a bunch of them. Maybe not as good, but there are a bunch of guys you can coach up like that. These guys right here, like Armstead, they're rare, and it's just so important to this team. But if you say a guy like George Kittle, you're not wrong at all. It's just my take right now. The Buccaneers, again, this video is for this year, and it's going to be Tom Brady, because Tom Brady's going to run the show here. Bruce Arians will too, but Tom Brady's they're going to come in there. They're going to run a Tom Brady offense. They got the pieces around him because it's his offense here, and he's going to run the show here. If it's based on future, I'm almost going Chris Godwin, because it's that today's style, do-it-all type of receiver. Can line up anywhere, can run any route, can catch any ball. So you actually go Chris Godwin for the future. Maybe a guy like Devin White for the future. I think Levante David is very important right now as well. His ability to play kind of inside and out, and the ability to do anything back there. But it's got to be Brady. It's kind of on Brady. Can he play better than he did last year? Can he lead them to the promised land, really? So I think it's an obvious choice here. The Titans, I think, is pretty obvious, too. It's Derrick Henry. They got some other good players, but the offense runs through Derrick Henry. It's another one of those teams that runs the ball to open up the pass, to open up the play action, keep the teams on their toes, make them thinking, okay, they're going to run, and that's all they do. Nope, they're going to toss it over your head. So Derrick Henry sets that up. Strongest runner in football. And I'm excited to see him this year, see if he can kind of continue on with that. So, I thought it was a pretty clear one. And the Washington football team went with Terry McLaurin, actually. And this is another tough one. You can debate some other guys. Going forward, potentially could be Chase Young. I just talked about ARIK Armstead and the role he plays. I can see Jonathan Allen actually playing that type of role, which could make this defense unique. So you could argue Jonathan Allen there. But I went with McLaurin mainly because they found a gem. They got a top-tier receiver for themselves here. But if you take him away as well, and this is kind of the deciding factor, you take him away, they are, even with McLaurin, they actually might have the worst receiver unit, but if you take him away, you're talking about the worst receiver unit in all of football of all time, probably. So McLaurin, especially with his former teammate Haskins, with that connection, factors into it as well, I think makes this passing game for them. So I want McLaurin here for sure. But those defensive guys, yeah, maybe Chase Young for the future. Long term, look out for Jonathan Allen to kind of play that unique role as I think having him makes it possible that their pass rusher on that side can kind of play off the ball a little bit, potentially. It's something to look out for. Nothing guaranteed there. We're going to see what Ron Rivera has up his sleeves, but I went with McLaurin here for the reasons I explained. You guys can let me know your thoughts in the comments. Everyone will have their different opinions, and I would love to see those in the comments. Smash that like button if you enjoyed. Would really appreciate it. Subscribe to both of our channels. Turn notifications on. I cannot wait for the football season to start because we got you covered here with my favorite content of the year. That is going to do it for this one, though. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.